welcome to our program on Backyard Citizen Science. I am Carol at the Ashland branch of the Pamunkey Regional Library, and my guest today is Brian McGurk, a member of the Virginia Master Naturalist Riverine Chapter. Well, welcome, Brian.
Thank you very much for having me this morning. Glad to be here.
Okay, now I think the first question people might have is, what exactly is citizen science?
Well, put simply, citizen science is the process by which people from all walks of life will volunteer to observe things and then tell others what they find out. And most of the time, the others they're providing information to are scientists at universities or scientific institutes or state and federal agencies who are trying to find out things about basic science, natural science.
Well, what kind of things might that be?
A lot of times we're observing, most of my examples are going to be from natural sciences, but we're observing things we see in nature, and that can be inventories of birds, amphibians, mammals, insects, and it can be helping out with managing habitats, pollinator habitats, and observing the interactions of pollinators and plants and insects. And another thing that citizen science can do is participate in water monitoring activities. That is, being trained to go out and collect water samples at streams and rivers in our areas, and that information, and do basic testing. That information is then put into a database, and it's available for scientists who are conducting studies and managing our waterways to keep track of the health of our streams.
Well, I understand there are several different ways that you can get involved in citizen science. Some of the things that I have seen are, like you're talking about, as data gathering, and where you make observations and then report them. What other things might you do besides that, such as?
You can participate, similar to the water monitoring, you can participate in activities that, as you mentioned earlier, things are called action science, or action volunteering, where you help to restore oyster reefs around the Chesapeake Bay. Over time, the natural oyster population in the Chesapeake Bay was severely harmed and diminished. And scientists who were studying the health of the bay have started this project whereby we've gotten restaurants to volunteer to save their oysters that they serve in restaurants. Citizen scientists or citizen volunteers then go and collect the oyster shells that restaurants have saved and put them in a general particular area. They basically dry out for a year, and then other volunteers will take them and put them into a place where the oyster larvae or oyster spat can grow on those shells. Then those shells with the new oysters on them get put in the bay to make a new oyster reef.
Okay. What kind of data gathering can people do in their own backyards right now?
There is a lot that can be done. You can go out in your yard and use your cell phone and participate in projects whereby you download an app called iNaturalist, and you then can report you take a picture of an animal, plant, or a bird or a mammal that you find, and you upload that information. What has happened with citizen science in the past 10, 20 years is the advent of GPS, smartphones, and GIS. GPS is Global Positioning Satellites. we're all kind of familiar with that, with our, when we're driving around and trying to figure out where to go, we use the mapping app on our phone. So you use your smartphone, and each smartphone is basically a GPS that can locate where you're at with your phone within approximately 100 feet, 30 meters. And so then you have a location where you're at. And if you download an app that allows you to record that location, record what you observe, and then upload that information into a database. The database goes into a GIS system, which is a geographic information system, whereby you have a location, you have an observation that can be mapped easily. And then everyone can then look at that on the web and see where you can actually do your observation, and then over time you can look at a map of your observation along with everybody else's observation, and say, for example, where you saw a pileated woodpecker, or a raccoon, or a butterfly larva.
What if I don't know what I've seen? You talk about observations,
Yes.
and there's a lot of things that I could go take a picture of, but I don't know what they are.
When I first got involved in this, I didn't know many plants at all, or insects. So the applications that you can put on your smartphone will help you identify things. There's an app called Merlin Bird Identification. The Cornell University Lab of Ornithology is very into using citizen science, and they have the Merlin Bird app, and they also have an app called Ebird. And I use the two of those, Merlin to help me identify a bird, because it will go through a little sequence of asking you questions. How big is the bird? What color was it? What was it doing? Was it at your feeder? Was it on the ground or flying in the air? And you answer those questions, and then it will give you a list of the possible birds with a picture of them. So if you don't know what a summer tanager is, but you reported this bird was flying across my yard and it's bright red, and it'll probably show you a picture of a cardinal and a summer tanager. Most people see cardinals a lot, and you'll be able to recognize that's not a cardinal, that was a bright red bird, it was different, and you'll be able to identify a bird that you didn't know what it was before. So you can use these tools to help you learn and to help you report scientific information that's then used by scientists who are trying to manage the natural resources, to learn about the habitats of bird species or other species that are native to our areas.
One of the things I really like about, excuse me, about iNaturalist is that you don't have to identify your observation. You take a picture of it, you upload it, and the citizen science and scientist communities will eventually look at that picture and identify it. And because you went through the app, they have all that GPS and date data as to when and where it was seen, and so they can add to the database that way.
Yes, that's a very easy tool to use, and it's mostly been a learning tool for me, but you can sign on to specific projects with iNaturalist that will be looking for specific types of animals or plants, and then you'll be assisting scientists who are trying to, let's say, to give an example, there's a study called phenology, which is or a type of science, sub-science called phenology, which is the study of the life cycles of plants or animals and how they might be changing over time. One example of a study learned that based on the data reported about the times of the year when plants were budding and then flowering, they were able to conclude that in northern climates, colder climates, plants in cities or urban areas are budding out earlier in the year than outlying areas. They also learned that in tropical areas, there's a different, almost an opposite thing going on. They can use this sort of information to find out how climate change is affecting the habitat of plants. And for example, they're learning that some conservation areas that have been sort of developed with the idea of preserving rare native species, they're worried that in the future, those conservation areas won't be able to act as a good habitat for those rare species because of the changing climate. And they need to be concerned about what future areas might need to be preserved in an area further north that will help to preserve those species.
And one of the very direct ways that you can help with those projects, here the Virginia Wildlife Mapping project, and you might have heard about the City Nature Challenge Richmond had last spring, and there will be more of those. And both of those you get to, you help when you use iNaturalist, and you can sign on to those projects specifically. We also, and another of the observation ones, Cornell's Feeder Watch program starts this coming November and runs through early April. That's very easy to get into. And then
there's also Global Big Day, or I'm trying to remember the name of it, in January.
There's the Christmas Bird Watch.
Christmas Bird Watch.
And then there's the Backyard Bird
Backward
Watch.
Bird,
In January, February. And
that's
the big
correct.
day in May. So all of those you can get to using Ebird. And that's a very, very wonderful app, and you kind of use Ebird and Merlin together.
Yes, that's how I do
to
it.
help identify birds, and it's a lot of fun.
The Audubon Society has an app that's similar to Merlin. I haven't been using that. I've been using Merlin because the Cornell lab makes things very available, very easy to use. And they have so many things going on, as we've said, all year round.
Some of these other things, Frog Watch, you can't do right now, but the Frog Watch season runs February through August, and you might want to look them up and see about getting their requirements. Now, all the things we've talked about so far have had to do with going out and making actual observations. Something else that always needs doing is we've been collecting data for over a century now. And most of that data was collected before we had the web. And so one of the big things that they need help doing now is transcribing all of those old records into digital format so they're more available to more people and to more scientists. So
That's Notes from Nature, correct? Yes.
yes, and you can, some of them, Penguin Watch, I've had the opportunity to work with one of the leaders of that project, Dr. Tom Hart in Antarctica. And Penguin Watch, they take lots and lots of pictures of penguins, but they need people to go in and tag the penguins on the pictures to do counts of mature and juvenile and just patterns there. And then that data helps them determine what is happening as far as climate change and movements dealing with food supply and such things. So that's kind of fun, especially for younger kids, to get in there and then just mark the penguins you see on a picture.
That's a great example of 21st century citizen science that ties in the GPS, the observation from that people from all walks of life are doing, and geographic information systems.
Okay, and Brian also mentioned the action projects, which once scientists have learned something is happening, say with a habitat, the English ivy, for instance, we have learned that that's a highly invasive species that will kill your native plants, and so an action project might be to go out and remove ivy. And I know there is a project here in Ashland on removing ivy at the park.
DeJarnette Park.
DeJarnette Park, thank
Yeah.
you.
There's a lot of parks around the Richmond metro area in central Virginia that have invasive species trying to cover the trees and the undergrowth. And one thing that folks can do to volunteer, we're moving into sort of volunteering into stewardship now of our environment, and just looking for, identifying invasive species. Some of them are, it doesn't take a lot of training to figure out what they are, and then there's work involved to remove those invasive species.
Mhm. Another one that has come to light to me recently has been dark sky during bird migrations, and how the city lights, the scientists have, from all this data that has been gathered, have learned that the birds use natural light as part of their migration, and when the city lights are so bright, it messes them up and they get lost. And hundreds and thousands of birds get lost every year because of the city lights. So something you can do from home is to participate in keeping at least the lights around your house dark at night, so you don't confuse the birds.
And another sort of action activity that I remembered that folks can do, there's a couple different ones. One has to do with birds, another one is quite different. You can basically put up purple martin boxes in your yard if you have the space, and you can then provide a habitat, nesting place for purple martins, and then that's a species that you can track and help scientists keep track of the inventory of birds like swifts and purple martins. The other thing I was thinking of is a project called COCORAS, which is an acronym for Collaborative Community Rain, Snow, Hail Network. And that is simply getting a rain gauge and daily taking rain gauge readings, whether you had rain or not, or snow, or hail, and get on the internet again once you sign up and report your measurements. And the scientists who are running that program are the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, particularly their subdivision, the National Weather Service. Those folks they make good use of the regular people observer data through the COCORAS network to have a lot of readings of rainfall. They use those, they need rain gauge readings to, everyone is familiar with the radar that you see on the news at night, the radar map. Well, radar is not a direct measurement of rainfall. They need to have direct measurements at specific locations to basically sort of calibrate those radar estimates of rainfall. And so the rain data that you might turn in as part of that network is definitely made use of.
And when you're ready to move beyond your backyard, there are even more things you can do. And we've got a few things here listed. There are many, many more. I can tell you I have traveled internationally doing citizen science, and that's a wonderful thing to do. So it can be as small as your backyard or as big as the whole earth.
And you know, this day and age, if you're not going out too much, or like Carol said, you can get at your computer and you can do things like transcribing notes from nature. If you can imagine, 100 years ago there were professional botanists making catalogs of rare species of plants. This is something that I participated in, and those data need to be related to our modern day catalogs of plants. So what we have right now are drawings of plants or a preserved dry plant with a note card next to it that was data that was put down, handwritten by a botanist a long time ago. Well, we'd like to get that into our modern day geographic information system, so citizen volunteers can go online, look at a photograph of that plant that was identified in that note card from 1925, for example, and then put that information into a database, typing it in, and then with the location, because they would have locations on those cards, you then have this old data from a long time ago that can be related to modern day information. And so you can do that at
Okay.
home without any going outside at all, I suppose.
Thank you. All of this sounds very exciting, but how much training do I have to have? I'm not a scientist.
It varies, training varies from basically following the directions that the website tells you, which would apply to, say, the transcribing notes from nature that I just talked about, to if you sign up with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology for the Feeder Watch Network, you pay a fee. They send you a packet with specific directions and some data guides, and you follow those directions, and that's the training that you need from that. You can, for other projects that you work with say the Alliance for Chesapeake Bay to conduct water monitoring, or to help the State Division of Wildlife Resources to manage a pollinator habitat, you would go to them and you might have a half day or a full day training of how to do this specific activity. And they'll also give you written directions to keep you, a manual basically to keep you following the directions that you need.
So basically, it's not hard, is it?
It's not really hard at all. It can
No.
be very easy with minimal directions, or it can be a devoted day to training, and then take your time following the directions that they give you.
Okay.
Or if you join a network or a volunteer group like like what I belong to, the Master Naturalist, then you have more extensive training that you commit to.
Okay, thank you. Next is how do we find opportunities? And we've come together with a list of just a few of the places where you can find many things. The EPA has a lot of programs that are available. This is,
The
I think,
National Park
National
Service.
Park Service has opportunities for you to help doing observations or management at national parks. NASA has one where you can, again, use your cell phone and take pictures of clouds.
Oh, I didn't know about that one.
I just heard about it recently too. SciStarter and Zooniverse both give you a whole list of options and possibilities, and you can look through those and find something that
The Penguin Watch is part of Zooniverse, right?
yeah,
Yes.
Penguin Watch is on Zooniverse, and a lot of these will be transcribing projects. The SciStarter and Zooniverse will be transcription projects, but there are other projects as well. And the Virginia Master Naturalist has their at-home projects page that has a lot of the things we've talked about and some other things as well. There's a wealth of opportunities out there.
I noticed that if you Google citizen science in Virginia or citizen science in the U.S., you will get pretty much these plus quite a bit more, and there will be sites that will give you a list, like EPA gives you a list of citizen science projects or ideas. So does the Virginia Master Naturalist site, but also the National Geographic Society and the Smithsonian Institution also have a slew of ideas or specific projects that you can look up online and check into.
Okay, and so if anybody wants to get more information, where should we go?
Well, you can, as a Virginia Master Naturalist, as a member of that program, I would recommend going to their website. Just go to virginiamasternaturalist.org, and you can find out information about that program, as well as the at-home projects that you can participate without being part of the VMN program. And you can just go to the web, and if you want to find out more about a specific project, you drill down on that website, and then there will be contact information for those specific projects. The Virginia Master Naturalist Program is sponsored by the Virginia State Natural Resource Agencies, the Department of Forestry, Division of Wildlife Resources, Department of Wildlife Resources, Department of Conservation and Recreation, and your Virginia Tech Cooperative Extension offices, which I think there are in every county. And I'm forgetting somebody, the Department of Environmental Quality. There's agencies basically support the VMN program, and they also support citizen science projects separate from the VMN program that Master Naturalists can volunteer to be part of if they want to. But so can someone else who does not go through that program. So there's lots of opportunities.
I think we've seen that. I want to thank you for being with
Sure.
us today. Excuse me. This has been a lot of fun on my part. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you have enjoyed it. And will come to see us at our next program from the Ashland Branch Library. Thank you.
Thanks very
Goodbye.
much.